This is the Point and Click podcast with your host, Mark Yapchak.
And welcome, everybody, to the podcast. I have my good friends Al Fasoldt and Nancy Roberts, or Nancy Roberts and Al Fasoldt, depending on what side of the set they used to sit on. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the retirement of Windows 10. Now, in case you're not aware, Windows 10 was retired as of October 4th. It is now officially an orphan. No security updates, no technical support, and no fixes for what Microsoft calls known issues. And that's bad news, right? Well, I'm going to loft the first question to Al. Al, why would Microsoft do this?
Because they're bad guys. That's why.
Why
would they do that? That's a good question. There's a couple of things that is obvious. One is that somebody like me, and I'm sure Nancy is the same. You know, you look at why would they do such a thing? They want to make more money. And it's possible that the Windows 10 franchise, the sales were down and so on. They wanted to make more money. That's probably not a very important reason because they make so much money. As I understand it, they make more money in their Office division, you know, selling Microsoft Office and the other things. Than they would make with Windows 10 or whatever. So it's probably not that. It might be because they had been seriously pushing, and I think it's good. They've been pushing the need for artificial intelligence baked into the computer. And Windows 10 doesn't have that capability. You can add it like they've done, and you can do it over the internet, for heaven's sakes, you know. But it's really something to have your computer. If you are searching for something, the computer does the search with the frosting on top. You know, it's actually doing something much more than you expected, and of course that's artificial intelligence. And there's much more coming down the pike. It's also possible that there is just no extra way that they can make Windows 10 safer without building something into it, which if you're going to do that, you might as well just make a safer operating system, which is Windows 11. That is safe, definitely safer. Some of the latest and greatest apps, you know, programs for Windows are going to be running only on Windows 11 because of the change in the underlying code in Windows. So I could see that. And there's probably other reasons too. But I think it's helpful to think about Windows 10 as being the first modern version of Windows. You know, you can go back to Windows Me. Oh my God! You know, I mean, there were so many things that Windows did that nobody really cared about, or very few people really cared about, and that's why I think it's important to take advantage of the people. These are smart programmers. The people who have taken Windows 11 and stripped it down to its essentials, keeping in stuff that's important, and allowing anybody. You don't need to have, you know, what do they call that, a license to run it. You can use your Windows 11 license if you want, or your Windows 10 license, or you can just, hey, I just like this the way it is. So that's pretty important, I think, that we're taking advantage of a brand new operating system with some nice features and making it able to run on older computers. You know, you don't have to have what Microsoft says, which is a lie. I'll tell you why. Microsoft says that in order to run Windows 11, you have to have a PC with a TPM chip, tested what module, that kind of thing. And you've got to have so many gigahertz, gigabytes, gigasnoodles of memory and space and all that. It turns out that one of the guys that I've respected for years, never met him except virtually, discovered in going through Microsoft's servers and the public stuff you can go through. He wasn't sneaking in the back door. He found some time back that there was a light version of Windows 11 that could run on any PC. Didn't need a TPM chip. It didn't need 30 gigabytes of memory and all that kind of stuff. Just regular computer, a regular laptop would run this. And apparently, Microsoft did that because its engineers needed to have easy access to Windows 11's features without having to, George, where's your super laptop? And can I borrow it? They would, and any computer that they had, they could use for it. Yeah. There would be a Windows Lite. Now, Microsoft
like
never
Windows
sold
Lite in a way.
Windows Lite because they want you to buy Windows 11. And so this guy and some others, as soon as he passed the word around, started working on a way to create a Windows Lite from Windows 11. And the best one, there's a bunch. The best one turns out to be Tiny 11. It's called Tiny 11, and we'll talk about how you can get Tiny 11 and what the ramifications are, and so that's pretty exciting.
I actually had several older computers, and I had them for dedicated reasons, one thing and another. And then I said, all right, I'm going to give these away. So, but they kept nagging me to upgrade. And then I kept saying, no. And then they said that I'd run out of pauses and I couldn't pause this automatic upgrade any further. And I was getting really frustrated. We lost Mark. And they did it anyway and completely destroyed and I had to go in and get rid of every extra thing on the computer in order to get it to run at all. And I couldn't do it. Now, granted, they were older computers, but they were working just fine for my purposes. So I would have one that I'd throw in a bag when I wanted to travel and I just wanted to do emails and, keep up with some basic stuff. I didn't really have anything that major going on, and it would not take no for an answer at a certain point. And I was, what?
So here's something that really bothers me. And I guess we all have these feelings now and then, like, gee, why doesn't Bill Gates give away all of his riches and put himself on the $200 a week budget? That kind of thing. Microsoft is really, really wealthy. And Apple is, of course, really wealthy. And one of the things I've always thought about, as much as Steve Jobs was a strange guy, had strange habits, and would cuss people out in business meetings and so on, Steve, and it wasn't something that was public until after he died, Steve regularly gave monthly amounts to all kinds of charities. He would,
no kidding.
He would find some charity and okay, let's give him $2 million, that kind of thing. And that's another side to Steve that I really admire. Here's Microsoft with millionaires on the payroll, billionaires on the payroll. And there are problems in the world and so on. But especially there are problems with Windows. And why can't Microsoft produce a version of Windows that instead of having the latest AI, has the latest ability to run without crashing, to use
Like I just experienced.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
I can understand
Exactly.
that. Now
Well,
let's take a look. Let's take a look at the way Microsoft is monetizing. I love that word. I love that word. Is
Making money.
is
making
monetizing
money.
Windows 10 and 11. They're monetizing both of them. If you want to keep using Windows 10, you can.
Hmm.
And the way you do that, there's a website you can go to um, that Microsoft runs that will sell you a subscription.
The right to use your operating
A
system.
right to use your own operating system.
They'll sell you they'll sell you a promise that we promise to do the best we can to fix any problems that you have with Windows 10 now that it's officially not supported. And that costs
30 a year, was that what you were saying? It was $30 a year?
$30 a year.
$30. No, a month.
A month? A
It
A
month?
costs it
month.
costs $30. As far as I remember, thirty
Oh
dollars a
my
month.
goodness.
And
That's a bit pricey.
and
That is a little
that's a
pricey.
little pricey.
Like my water
But
bill.
the kicker here is the that period started in October. That was the release date. So $30 for the month of October, $30 for November. Well, suppose you decide to wait. I'm not going to go for this. I'll just
Hmm.
see what happens, and then next year, maybe next December or something, if I'm having trouble with Windows 10, I'll go ahead and subscribe to this. What Microsoft requires is that if you subscribe to it at some later date, you first have to pay the entire fee from the date of the release of Windows 11. So even though let's say next December, which is like 11 months away, you decide, oh, I think I should get that. We're having trouble with our Windows 10 PC. So first you pay for a year's worth up front while you weren't using, you
Hmm.
weren't using that protection. And then you pay 30 a month for that. That seems so, it's like they hired the Grinch or something. And like
Well,
why would they do that? I just,
well, let me ask Nancy this because now that we've kind of danced around a little bit, we've touched on it a little bit, but Nancy and you were definitely at the receiving end of a lot of phone calls on our old TV show about people that were in the predicament we're discussing about how do I get certain things to work. But the real question is, what are people to do now, Nancy? I mean, now that they're now Microsoft is forcing their hand. Al kind of alluded to it, to maybe find a way to work, for workarounds, or maybe just
yeah.
bite the bullet and subscribe. But what are people supposed to do, Nancy? I mean, you've had people that are struggling with their computers right now, like I just
Mm.
experienced a crash on mine.
Yeah.
What do you tell them? What do they do?
Well, that's interesting because I think we've probably all been in a similar predicament at some point if we had any older computers, and I certainly did. And one of the things, Al, I'll get back to this because it hit me as you were describing option 3, I guess, in the stack of options, was that you could subscribe to a, get out of jail free card sort of thing, only it's not free. I
Right.
was not offered that when I was told that I'd run out of pauses on the upgrade to the system. So I'm very interested, why when it first hit my computers that you have to upgrade, you have to upgrade. I didn't see that option immediately, but we are informed that upgrading to 11, if Microsoft gives you the, yes, your computer has sufficient innards to absorb the attack, you can do that. That's the official upgrade method. And they will check your computer out and tell you if you're good to go. And obviously, you're going to have a slightly newer machine. And then you can upgrade if your machine is sort of on the bubble. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about how you might do that. So your computer has officially failed the test, but there are ways around that. And then finally, of course, you can do as Al said and figure this out about whether or not you want to pay for the privilege of continuing to use your Windows 10, which I really wish I had known that I had, because for a couple of the old machines, I wouldn't
They're
worry
done.
about it too much.
Yeah.
And now they had to be completely stripped of all the other software. I can still give them away, which was my intent. Here, somebody take a computer that, it's an older machine, but if you're going to just do email and that sort of thing. However, I couldn't even leave anything on it.
Apple hasn't really ever done that, have they, Al or Nancy? Have
Forced
they
to.
ever forced you to say your old system is no longer capable of running running the Apple OS? I mean, I have a Mac that's probably going on 6 years, and I'm still running the latest.
I've got an ancient one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why is it that Microsoft chooses this route and Apple says, we're going to make sure that your older hardware is going to continue to work even if we add new features? Is it just because of the being shackled to DOS and the old way of doing things that forces Microsoft to force you to upgrade? Tough question, I know.
It's a tough question, because your mind immediately tries to find, how could this be explained in a society where everybody loves each other and, they're trying their best to be friends and so on. But in fact, you hit a dead end, and Microsoft seems to be, number one, a money-making company. Number two, maybe a software company. And number three, maybe a hardware company, and maybe, who knows, And at some point, you get the feeling like you were mentioning Apple. At some point, it makes sense to own or use a computer. I have this, my Apple laptop is probably 6 years old, 7 years old. And it is as reliable as you could ever imagine. The screen is, up until this past year, where there were Windows laptops with better screens, the screen is the best you could find on a laptop. It's like, holy cow, it's wonderful. And part of all that comes from the decision Steve Jobs was the one who started it. The decision that we're going to make the best possible products and not worry about money coming in, because people are going to buy them if they're the best possible products. Hey, okay. And Microsoft started doing that with its line of laptops, the Surface laptops. They're really good, really nice computers. And one thing that the Surface computers do that older Windows laptops, not older Macs, because Apple was way ahead of that game, is changing the chips to ARM chips, ARM. And don't ask me what that means. I mean, ARM chips,
Yeah.
And they're faster than Intel chips. They're cooler. They run cooler. They have the ability to do many more things at the same time. The multi-threaded multitasking and all that. So having a Mac laptop, you've got something that is just stupendous and all that stuff. But now Apple has ARM chips also. They make themselves and design themselves. So one of the things that I like to tell people, I'm going to get a new computer for myself for Christmas present, And I say, well, if you're going to buy a Windows computer, get an ARM version. And, at the store, go to whatever store, make sure there's some indication that it uses ARM chips. The most popular right now is Snapdragon.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Snapdragon.
Snapdragon has ARM computer chips, the actual chips that do all the work. And
Snapdragon is a brand or is a type of computer?
Snapdragon is the chip. It's a company that makes the chip.
ARM chip.
Yeah. So there's a lot of companies that use Snapdragon chips. A Snapdragon chip uses less voltage and amperage. Uses less electricity. Battery life with a Snapdragon laptop is oftentimes a week. Go for a week without needing to charge them up.
Really?
And I have some belated Windows laptops, and I keep giving them away. But the one that I like the best, it's an HP, and it's 7 or 8 years old. Very nice design. I use it all the time, and the batteries last 5 hours or something. It's not bad.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
So batteries for a real long time. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. That's what a Snapdragon does. So those things are pretty important. So people who are designing software like Microsoft, they're thinking about, well, we got to make them, we got to make sure that they don't use too much electricity and so on. So instead of putting a lot of real important features in, they put in features like, this goes to the web and connects to artificial intelligence on the web. Whereas if you had an ARM computer, Snapdragon and the others.
So it's these features like communicating with AI and the web, this is all part of the chip. It's just part of the inherent mechanics of the system, or
there's basically like 3 different kinds of chips in a computer, and a lot of lesser ones. One is the core chip that supplies all the muscle power, and that's Snapdragon and the Intel chips. Another is a chip that allows this computer to communicate, so it'll have the ability to connect to a 10 gigahertz internet and so on, like Apple's chips do. And a third might well be the one that controls the display. And these days, you don't need my Windows PC with the 37 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah.
My Windows PC doesn't have one of these chips that you insert in and then, tighten it and close the case and so on. It has a built-in chip on the motherboard that does all those things. And I've been totally satisfied. I don't think that, my gosh, I'm not going to pay $400, $600, $1,200 for a GPU, graphics processor unit chip for my home PC. I could buy a good laptop for the price of one of those external things. So times are changing, and it's really nice. But the revolution is being fueled by the ARM chips, and there's an actual ARM association that gives advice to people that want to start up making ARM chips, that tests them, for the industry and so on. And that's kind of cool. And the only major player that hasn't been in the ARM association is Apple, of course. They design and make their own, and boy, are they good chips. Oh my God.
Well, let me throw this out to you both. Are we approaching an era in computers where I want to use the phrase computer heal yourself with AI, where AI will do a lot of that backboard stuff that the user shouldn't have to worry about? Will it be able to fix its own problems? Will it be able to alert you to things that you need to address so that you're not the one that has to go and do the investigating? How many weekends between the three of us have we wasted trying to resurrect a
Oh my
computer that had
God.
no longer functioned the way we
Oh my
expected it to?
God.
Are we at the
Or that's
cusp of
been
an era that way?
sabotaged by the
Right.
Yeah, I
updates,
think
right? Yeah.
so. I
Right.
think so.
Do you think we're there or approaching
How
that?
many times has your phone, whether it's an Apple phone or the competition phone, how many times has your phone
Android.
failed to boot up, or has it crashed? I mean, it's not
Really?
hard to make.
Almost never.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not hard to make it do the right thing at the right time, and yet we're, in terms of the industry, we're still making lousy computers. That I remember, I was looking at some old. Um, I guess they must have been little programs that I wrote years and years ago, back when I still had a brain, and one of them would automatically reboot the computer based on something that was going on, and after you shut down, it would then um, replace the tired old uh, parts of the software that run the computer. There are too many to name.
We compare them to the
with
latest and greatest.
fresh ones.
Wow.
The registry, for example, was replaced was cleaned and replaced every day at 3 in the morning. They would do this and come on.
Yeah.
And I think, holy cow! And we put up with that because we didn't know anything else. We didn't know anything
Right.
better. But that's there. I find it interesting when you look at what Microsoft is doing with this subscription, $30 a month, and you pay from the beginning. Doesn't matter what. The money that would be coming into Microsoft, there are 70. Somebody probably with a very cautious estimate figures there are 78 billion Windows users in the
Wow.
world. 78 billion.
Times 30 a month.
And if you take a small fraction of that, like 1%,
Yeah.
that's a whole lot of computers and a whole lot of
It's a lot
money
of
coming into Microsoft if those people subscribe to this crazy idea instead of like, I don't want to do that, and I don't want to have this fat pig get into my computer called Windows 11, especially when you can do it without. Nancy, you were
And you've
mentioning
been happy with things the way they were, right? You weren't unhappy. It wasn't.
you were mentioning older computers and they give them away and so on. But the older computers can run Windows 11 Lite, what is called
Light.
Yes. It's called Tiny 11. Tiny 11 is the one.
Where would they find that? I know in your notes, Al, you had mentioned there's. Is it on GitHub?
Well, here's
for people to download it.
It's available from different technical sites and so on. But here's my advice on this, and it's because I had to learn it myself. I kept finding, wait a minute, that's not the same one I had last week. That's a different one. The code keeps changing. It's an exciting thing. How can I make this bloated barge of an operating system into a sleek runabout? Like what? So these guys were using a version of Windows 11 from a year ago because I don't want to keep changing. I'm working on it, George. Let me see if I can finish this. But now they're gotten to the point where they know what to do, pretty much so. And so as soon as Microsoft comes up with a new version, And these are versions, meaning they fixed things, they added things, and so on. A new version of Windows 11 at their Microsoft download site, anybody can download. They used the latest one. And so the websites that have Tiny 11 for download will tell you how late, how current the version of Windows 11 that this is based on. And that's great. So instead of saying, go here, and then discovering that 3 months from now, somebody finally says, Molly, let's go ahead and try that. They had it on that, what do they call that, the pod something? Let's try that out. And you got an old version. So if you go and look at the current ones that are the current downloads, and you do a simple search, Tiny 11 download. That's the simple search. Easy, all one word.
I'll put that in the show
11.
notes.
And you need another thing too. You need a way to turn that Tiny 11 download into an ISO. It's an ISO file. The download is an ISO file. An ISO file is a file that your computer can create an operating system out of. It just goes through and says, okay, we'll make it. So the ISO for Tiny, for the Tiny 11 version of Windows, is going to be changing because the version of Windows changes. And
so it keeps up with it basically as the new Windows 11 comes out. The Tiny does its necessary thing to stay current.
Yeah, there's a wonderful website that covers what does a Tiny 11 version of Windows 11, what does it leave out? And among the things that it leaves out, of course, is the requirement for this TPM chip, which, as it turns out, I mean, these guys, I don't want to make enemies here, especially since I'm married to a very smart lady who understands this better than I do, and my daughter understands this better than the two of us do. And she was a Microsoft engineer for years and years and years, and now she works for Expedia, the Expedia company. And she's just a fabulous mind. So she's not included in this. But I swear that there are a lot of people who are really good at Microsoft who aren't pushing the envelope, who are not looking ahead and saying, hey, why do we have to put in to the operating system of a computer such things as a game that no one's going to play unless you're a game player. And guess what? If you're a game player, you're going to get your game somewhere else. You're not going to say, hey, I've got a Windows computer that plays games. What? Don't leave. Come on back, guys. Yeah. So some of that stuff is just obviously unnecessary. And some of it just doesn't make sense in terms of making friends out of your customers. Why have ads? Yeah. Why in the world have ads? You open up something, a web page, and there's an ad on top of it from Microsoft. I mean, it's like they said, go ahead and put an ad on this thing. Oh,
yeah. It's funny because the term that keeps popping into my head after you talked about that is it's called bloatware.
Yeah, bloatware.
For a lot of years, if you remember, when you did installations, you probably both have experienced this. I know I have quite a bit. You'll install software back in the day when you still installed it off of a CD, and it would have, if you didn't do custom as a choice when you're doing the installation, it would install all these other programs, maybe unbeknownst to you.
Yes.
And then you'd be going in, why is my browser suddenly going to this browser as opposed to my traditional browser? And you discover that your computer has been pretty much hijacked by all this bloatware.
Yeah.
So I go custom and I say, I'm only installing the software I want to install. The rest of that nonsense, I know you have a degree.
And even that will come and bite you in the rear end. I was
Right.
doing something, I've been doing a lot of web operations, seeing who's got the latest version of Tiny 11 and all that. And so there was a website that sounded legitimate, and it probably was or is legitimate. And so I downloaded their homepage so I could get at it easily. And when I opened that homepage up, I noticed that there was something on my screen that took some space in my taskbar. What? Another page. I didn't download. I look at that page, and it was full of crap. Advertising and
Yeah.
and more that I don't even want to talk about because it's embarrassing. My gosh, they're a legitimate organization, and so they sell this idea of we're not going to put ads on our pages, but we'll let you open up in the background here crap, and just terrible stuff. Is there a way around it? Yeah, there's a way around it. When Google and the Firefox people and all that kind of stuff, when they discover, hey, we've got a way to solve that. You only get your page, no other page. That kind of thing. That would be really nice. I'm talking too much here. Now,
Well,
I have one quick question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
It just occurred to me as I was listening to all this. Are we kind of going back to where we were a long time ago with the Mac and the PC in the sense of what are you selling, the software, the hardware, or the integration of the two? Because I remember, Mac decided we're going to go school and we're selling our hardware with our integrated software, and you cannot touch our kernel. You can't do other programs. We will approve the programs or create them ourselves. But those things are going to be wedded, whereas PC went, okay, we're just open. Cheaper machine, less integrated to the actual physical device. Because now you're talking about a chip that really makes all the difference in the world in terms of its security and its functionality. Isn't that kind of going where Mac went? I don't know. Maybe I'm making
That's
it
a good question.
too simple.
I'm curious, and what do you think, Al? I mean, do you think that's where we're heading? I mean, I think a lot of this discussion revolves around what do we really need?
yes.
Yeah,
I think what we really need is a computer that works and that doesn't have a lot of extras that we don't really need or want. And I mean, who's to know? I mean,
right.
can we say that the crash that I had today could have been caused by additional software installed unbeknownst to me that's
Or
running in the
eating up
background, eating up resources? Right,
Yeah.
right.
There are some things you can't prevent. Some problems you can't prevent. And I swear, a couple of weeks ago, I'm not sure when it was. It wasn't that long ago. There was a huge solar flare, and it knocked out every one of my computers. It knocked out. Now people were saying, "Oh, that darn," and they're blaming Microsoft, or they're blaming Steve Jobs or something. No, every one of them went crazy, and I could see, and I had to rebuild. One of them. I could see where there's a need for something simple, easy to understand, and powerful, and portable. Guess what? We have those already. They're called phones.
Right.
Right.
Those are
right.
That's the answer to your wishes, to your prayers.
Except for the format.
So what are we doing? I guess the manufacturers are making the laptops smaller, easier to understand, more like phones. I mean, there are some laptops made in China, they don't sell well here, that are maybe 7 by 9 inches. And, okay, it's put it in your coat pocket and all that. Just get a big phone. I mean, why worry about that?
Do we really need, let me ask you this, do we really need desktop computers in the form that they are in right now? Are we really at a point, I think we've had this conversation in the past, Are we moving out of the PC desktop era into the, I know the phones are a very big part of everybody's lives and everybody has one. Is there really a need for a laptop anymore or a PC anymore when you have a phone that can do just about everything that a PC or a laptop can do?
Nancy, what do you use? Which do you use the most? That's hard to say that
Yeah, that's
all
a good
together.
question.
Which do
Yeah,
you
what
use the
what
most?
part?
A
Yeah,
laptop or a
For me, it
desktop?
totally depends on the chore. And you got to remember, I came up out of the old school of keyboard, typing.
right, right.
And when you can type really, really fast, you can get an awful lot done with your hand as
Yeah,
opposed to your thumb.
yeah. I can't. I
And
can't do that.
you know,
I mean,
so
I was
that's
too old
for
when
me,
phones
that's a
came along.
limitation.
So, but
As much as I like the speed and the accuracy and the reliability of my phone, it's great. And I do use it a lot for many chores I used to do. Just looking for
yeah.
things. I want to look for something real quick.
Un-
Don't have to bother with the computer. But if I'm going to do work, write an article, yeah, I'm not going to do that
Yeah,
on my phone. Now,
yeah.
I don't know if people do. That's a good question. Now you're talking more and more. People are
Hmm.
talking. However, I see the artifacts of that in print now, where it's
yeah.
clear that that was spoken as opposed to thought through with your writing brain.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yeah.
that will adapt, I'm sure. I mean, just look at the sophistication of autocorrect now
Yes.
with a typed document. It's so much smarter with the grammar and the spelling and the word choice and that than it used to be just annoying. Now it's gotten a lot smarter. Phones still give me they drive me crazy sometimes with what they'll throw into a simple social media post. I didn't say that. Yeah, you
But
did.
I think I read somewhere, maybe you guys have read it too, that they said that the English language is changing.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if maybe it was tied to an article on maybe Chat GPT and the AI portion of our discussion. Do you think that the way we write and communicate is going to change significantly in the next 10 or 20 years because of the advent of AI and Chat GPT taking over our creative process, or at least supplementing
I
it?
think it's
I mean, what do you think?
it's changing already, Mark.
Yeah,
Um, it
absolutely.
changes. It changes quickly, but not so quickly that it's threatening us. Um, I remember this goes back a ways. I remember talking to the guy who reviewed uh, records at the newspaper, and he said,
Records.
there's a quandary here because this
There's a
this
throwback.
record, the title of this lead song of this record has a bad word in it. And he didn't say has a bad word. He told me what the
A
word
naughty
was.
word.
It was spelled with 4 letters, and it's not the one you might be thinking of. It starts with sh. Okay, so um, the newspaper would never ever let that word appear in it was a record review. And so when the proofs came up, those are the pages that are separated, then you read them and see that they're okay and make corrections. When the proofs came up, I was in the composing room and I'm looking at this. There's his review. Oh my God.
There's a
There's the
bad
name
word
of
in
that.
there.
There's the name of that thing. Um, and from that time forward, and a lot of newspapers date their changes back to the time that Nelson Rockefeller, now I know you're too young to remember this, but Nelson Rockefeller at a Republican National Convention gave the finger to some other
Oh my
Republican
goodness.
who was speaking. Nelson
Wow.
was in the crowd and he gave the finger. You know what I mean? Um, and so TV was showing it live. Like wow,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
So we got to deal with this. Is it okay to show a actual person with a gesture like that? So that was back in the 70s or 60s. What we're
60s, yeah.
finding now is people people talk the way they talk. I was surprised when Nancy's niece's son, who's an upstanding guy now in his 30s. He is just the sweetest, most wonderful, hardworking guy. Oh, it's just, and he's a volunteer fireman and all this. He's 11 years old. We're driving somewhere. We took him camping, he and his sisters. We went camping, and we passed a car, and he said, "Holy, 4-letter word, holy fuck. That guy is whatever. He's using his phone while he's driving."
Now watch a movie or a series on TV, and you're going to hear it I used to count them just for fun. Say,
Yes.
1, 2, 7, 9, 12,
Yes.
15, and it's 30 seconds.
Yes, and so
Come on.
at last, maybe we're getting used to it. My mom and dad, bless them, they're both long
my
since
parents
gone
were
on to their
horrified,
reward, would turn the TV off or change the channel immediately if somebody swore. And all she could talk about was, we watched this movie last night on Channel 9, and, that language was just terrible. These days, the language in the movies is the same as the language in real life. The plumber comes to fix something, and the first words out of his mouth is that, blah, 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 blah. I don't think there's a solution for that. I don't think there's a way around it.
Well,
so the language certainly is changing, and it's changing because we are all connected, and there's a rule that
you hear it
this
all
stuff
day
goes
long.
to
So
the bottom.
Your pronunciation changes, your intonation changes, the meaning of words. I watch it change.
Yes.
In within a month, somebody will start using a word in a particular way, and the next thing you know, everybody's doing it, and you're not going to stop it.
Yes.
Well, we watch a lot. My daughter and I watch a lot of YouTube videos. If you're familiar with Twitch, which is another streaming platform for us, it's been used by and taken over by gamers mainly. On YouTube especially, I know if I would probably not be watching some of the YouTube videos with my parents because
oh my gosh,
they use the language that you would use if you were in a room with your friends and you're having drinks and you're snacking and you're just chatting and your expletives are flowing with whatever the mood you're in. But it's become so much so that you're almost desensitized to it.
You're desensitized.
Yeah. It's not like, oh my goodness,
that's
I can't believe
okay.
they said that word.
Yeah, that's okay.
Which is okay because that's how we
the
talk
word
off
doesn't
camera.
It doesn't mean that anymore.
Right. It's not oh my goodness, I can't believe he swore at that person. Right.
Other logisms for I can't say it's the B word or the T word or the whatever. You're not allowed to
the
say
Z
that
word.
You might get demonetized. I know YouTube. I think their policy is that if you swear or use bad language in the first 10 minutes of a video, you'll get demonetized. Yeah. But after the first 10 minutes is over, they're right back to it's all whatever the mood strikes them, and it doesn't shock me anymore. And I mean, I'm not,
no,
if you talk like a sailor, you're not going to be like, oh my goodness, this person, and it doesn't carry a social stigma like it used to.
It does not.
If somebody would talk like that 20 years ago, you're like, oh, what a cruddy, ugly person that is.
So to me, that's the biggest change. The biggest change
that is
in our linguistic habits have to do with words that used to be totally
offensive,
verboten. Desensitized.
Well, that and I noticed intonation, which is interesting because you hear AI do this, where it'll be reading something, it will say, and it went to Dr. Jones, who did, because it doesn't understand that the period in that case means doctor. And it's getting better, but when you first heard AI talking, you would hear those errors all the time, and it's bit by bit by bit gotten smoother. But I do think a lot of our other intonations, for example, if we're going through a list of things, we'll give it the up thing. So we'll go, and he went there, and he did this, and he then did that. And it's almost a way of not letting somebody else speak.
Well, I'm using software. I'm doing a video about the town of Onondaga with the town of Onondaga Historical Association. I'm working with them on a video. And they asked me, back in the day, Nancy, you'll remember this, back in the TV, the olden days
The
of
olden days.
television, you'd have people in your staff that were voiceover people.
Yes.
And you would say, I need you to read this copy for me for a commercial or a video I'm
Yeah.
doing. Well, I did a little research and I said, I could probably look for somebody that's in my, my address book that would do voiceovers. And then I came across a website called 11 Labs. I don't know if you're familiar with that website.
Yeah, and they now do it all.
It
Yeah.
is it is manned by people that have lent their vocal likeness
Yes.
to
Yes.
this website. So I
Actors
kind of
and
got past
they're
part of
doing
the apprehension because Jessica, my daughter, is a graphic designer, and she is very, very sensitive to
Oh, she
AI
is.
and
Yes.
artificial intelligence
Yes.
in the field that she considers a creative field. It's being taken over by computers. And so I said, no, this person lent his voice and he will allow the voice to be used by their software engine to create dialogue.
Yeah.
And kind of what Nancy mentioned was a case. It's the old adage of when you hired a news reporter from out of the area, they would pronounce Manly as
Yes.
Manlio,
Yes.
or
Swaggy or-
yeah, Seneca instead of Seneca because they didn't know. Yeah, they didn't know. And it's the same way with AI. AI is very much has to learn, and you have to really get phonetic with it on a lot of cases where it doesn't understand how to pronounce words. But it's getting better. I mean, it's just in version 1 to version 2, a lot of those mistakes are disappearing.
I've been amazed by the progress
Great
in such a short period of time. And I thought, well, all those negatives about how it was reading, what the intonation was, what the meaning was, it didn't have them. And now it's getting better and better and better.
And you do voiceover work, Nancy. I mean, are you concerned that that technology is going to supplant you and is going to make it unlikely?
The first thing was obviously when the market opened up because of having the equipment at home. You didn't have to go into a studio. You didn't have to have all the silence. You didn't have to have all those features that were important because the computer would clean it up. That was great for a while because you could work from your home on audio. And unfortunately now the marketplace is huge. And of course the AI. And I can imagine too a world in which someone who could intelligently read a script but didn't have a great voice, you could marry with an AI that had a beautiful flowing,
No,
sound.
never thought of that.
But you're giving it the meaning, and your voice doesn't have to be gorgeous, or you can have a bad day, with a cold or something and not lose any time. But yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm assuming maybe maybe we're a little ahead of the curve on that, but I'm assuming that eventually software designers for video games will just utilize AI as their primary voiceover. Because I know, Nancy, you did in the past do voiceover work for software.
Games, yep.
But the part that I'm worried about, or I'm not worried about it, but I'm interested in knowing is, like you said, the intonation, the implication of what they're trying to say, and having that mental power to know, this is a very serious moment. It's not a monotonous, sentence. Is a very heartfelt sentence. Are we close to that?
Have you noticed this droning audio bed that's under everything now?
Yeah.
It drives me a little crazy. And I wonder now, they've given breath to the AI. I don't know if you've noticed that, but when we talk, we take a breath. And so you hear that little catch every so often.
Yes.
You sometimes will edit them out if they're too frequent or too prolonged or something as you're doing an audio track. But I've noticed they've added them to the AI because it makes them sound more human.
More natural.
However, there's still something missing, I'm guessing, because there is that audio, that tone, and it kind of varies a little bit. My cat is here, like music, but I don't know. For me, it's annoying. However, I'm thinking it must be filling in a blank somewhere. Where
it must be, and I wonder if because we, as our culture becomes more accustomed to those technologies being in our everyday life, I think people will just generally come to accept that as just the new normal. I don't think you're gonna. I mean, we notice it because we've had the longevity in the industry to know, the before time, before all this became an issue. But it's getting more intelligent. I think the visual AI technology is improving to the point where you can still feel that something's not quite there. It's a little off when you see stuff that's generated by AI. But like every bit of technology, as time goes by, they refine it and fine tune it to the point
Yes.
where your human eye is not going to notice those subtleties anymore.
The
And
hands
that's, I
are
think,
getting better, right?
where we're heading.
That was
But,
always one of the giveaways for AI generated imagery, was that the hands, for some
Well, it
reason,
was like,
quite
why do
right.
they have 6 fingers?
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
And
but
now you're not
well,
seeing that so frequently. So
I always appreciate our chances to chat. I know it's been a little bit of a gap there in between our last and this current one, and I'd like to get back together with you down the line a little bit and do kind of a maybe a predictive forecast of what you see coming in the year ahead. I used to really enjoy the
yes,
year-end predictions, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to dig up one of our
Oh
old year-end
no!
predictions
Oh
from
no!
like the 1990s, and I want to
I
play it for
love
you
it.
and get your reaction to it. I think that would
Oh,
be really interesting to
oh my,
see
oh my
how on
gosh!
or off we were.
that would be
But
really interesting.
let's do that. But I appreciate Nancy as always. I appreciate Al as always coming on and indulging me with your knowledge. And it's always, I always leave feeling like I've contributed very little, and you guys have contributed so much. And I always appreciate your frank and candid discussion about the topics that are piquing my interest. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming
You
on.
are the glue,
Thank you.
Mark. You are the glue.
As long as I'm not the horse out to pasture, I don't mind being the glue.
There you go.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank
You
you.
Thank
too.
you.
The Point and Click podcast is on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and you can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.